I'm Dr. Drew Pinsky. I'm an internist, addictionologist. I've been working in psychiatric hospital for 20+ years. I was read by Tyler season 2 about 18 months ago, and at that time I said, I want to know what's going on in your brain. We're going to figure that out someday, and here I am.
So we're going to do a bunch of things today, Dave.
Yeah, tell me what.
With Tyler.
Yes. We are at the Peak Brain Institute with Dr. Andrew Hill. He's a leading neuroscientist. I've known him for years, and we're going to do something called a quantitative EEG. This is his area of expertise, and we're going to see what we can learn. Tyler did a psychic reading of myself and my wife.
Dad, and a hemorrhage of some sort right around Halloween.
That's my dad. He died a few days before Halloween, and it was a hemorrhage.
Wow.
There is no doubt in my mind that this is a neurological process. But what is he tuning into is the mystery. It's hard for me to believe that he's talking to dead people.
He's talking to dead people.
But if he isn't, I don't know what it is.
During that reading, I thought this would be really interesting to try to dive in and figure out what is happening in his brain.
Okay.
Unusual eye movements, rotatory nystagmus, a lot of right upper lobe sort of gazing. Yeah.
How are you feeling?
Good. I'm really excited about today. Ever since I met with Dr. Drew, I was curious, as was he, about what's going on scientifically with my brain. This would be really fascinating because I've never done anything like this, and I've wanted to for so long. Since I was 10 years old, I've wanted to understand what is or isn't happening in my brain, and today will finally be the chance to do that.
That's awesome.
I'm really just curious to see if there's any changes that go on during a reading, like in my brain. I mean, I know that I get physical effects. I sweat, I feel overwhelmed physically, I'll get pressures and pains. I'll be curious to see if there's any neurological component to it.
So are you reading a celebrity today, or do you know?
I have no clue. I assume it'll probably be a celebrity.
Okay.
Hey, how's it going?
How are you?
Oh, good to see you again.
Good to see you as well. So we're going to do this. Yes. We're finally going to do this. I told you I wanted to do this. You were interested.
Yes.
This is Dr. Andrew Hill. He's a leading neuroscientist, so he's the perfect guy to do this. We're going to experiment on your son today. So,
I love it.
First, we have to do some preliminary tests on you, Dr.
Sure.
Hill, right?
That's right. We're going to do a brain map and an attention test and see how your baseline sort of noggin functions. And then later, of course, we'll see how it functions during your reading.
Go get it.
All right, sir. Come on in here.
One thing I don't think is happening is I don't think psychics are talking to dead people.
My theory is that consciousness and self functions are co-created. I think we do it with other humans.
We're going to measure your brain activity, so come on back to one of the recording rooms.
So it makes sense to me that we leave big parts of ourselves behind on important relationships.
First of all, we're going to put one of these caps on your head.
All right.
I think people like Tyler can access those remnant pieces of other people that we leave behind in one another's brains.
And so a path of gel will connect your scalp to the electrode. We already have some brain waves. You have brain activity.
That's always a good sign.
And we're done with initial recording. We got beautiful data. We'll make sure we save it.
Tyler has no idea who's reading today, but I've asked a friend of mine who himself has an interesting brain, both by virtue of what he's done to it and pre-existing, and he's a skeptic. He's a really significant skeptic, and he's a lot of fun. I thought Tyler would like. Steve, come on out.
Oh, I recognize you. Steve-O, right?
How's it going?
Yes,
That's me.
how are you? Oh, it's wonderful to meet you.
My name is Steve, also known as Steve-O, and I rose to pseudo-celebrity on MTV with a show called Jackass. For the most part, I did the crazy stuff because I'm an attention whore. And now I'm a clean and sober attention whore.
So Dr. Hill and I are going to be watching it in real time, so we're going to be able to really comment and make note on exactly what's happening to your brain while you're doing this.
All right, well, this will be neat.
Today I showed up with my fiance, Lux Wright, and my Peruvian street dog, Wendy.
Such a good dog.
I've known Dr. Drew for almost 20 years. He's a very good friend of mine, but I have no idea what happened during his reading. To be fair, I think I can picture what it's gonna look like for me. I don't know if I'll really buy it, but I'm gonna get a reading from a psychic.
No, I'm not being hyperbolic or acting. I'm very interested.
I could probably use a brain scan. I've been bopped in the head quite a bit.
It's gonna be interesting.
And we'll get some brain waves on the screen. And I'll come back and touch these up if they start to drift.
Cool.
And so just ignore me.
No worries.
All right, enjoy.
All right, thank you. Really, it's awesome. I'm excited for today. We'll see what happens. So today I have my notebook, and throughout this duration, you'll see as I scribble, and I'll basically just do this. It's just my way of kind of meditating, turning on, and just starting to kind of be receptive or aware of any subtle changes that go on in my body. and then I'll just verbalize everything that comes through. So 1 sec. Okay, so I'm gonna just take a 30 seconds.
He's having surges of alpha because it's looking, oh my goodness. His visual system, it's like he's visualizing something, he's seeing something or dreaming.
Like dreaming.
Yeah, it's a mix of beta and alpha, and those two things don't usually come together. Parts of his brain aren't communicating the same way that yours and I would when conversing.
So immediately as I'm connecting, I feel like we're gonna have to talk about at least 3 people. Now, the interesting thing is immediately I'm drawn to your mom's side of family, and that's a very big area that I feel like I have to talk about. I basically have to highlight your mom, and I don't know why. The way this is coming through is on that side of family, on mom's side, they're just having me talk about your mom and her relationship with her biological father. Do you know if she had a relationship with her biological father that could have been tumultuous or if there could have been any challenges?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The way I would describe this is basically she sees how he affected her in ways that she maybe didn't see when she was here and how that informed some of her behavior. And it just is one of those things where there's a feeling of resolve. So it would be that.
I'm gonna sneak out there and scale it up a little bit.
Awesome, awesome.
I just doubled the scale because he's making such huge brain waves that I wasn't scaled properly. I scaled for the same scale he did earlier today, and his brain looks different now, so yeah. He's putting himself sort of in that state between crisply alert and really receptive.
Well, like sort of hypnotic-ish. And I can tell you, as being a subject, you feel like you're in that with him.
Probably are.
Do you know of a Jane or a Janice?
Oh my God, yeah.
Okay, cool. They're having me acknowledge her, just bring up her health. Just keep this in mind.
Mom's sister was Janice.
Okay.
Okay, Janice passed away.
Right.
Cirrhosis.
Gotcha.
But yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, they keep going to mom's side of family in the way this is coming through, so I'm just gonna go with it. They're having me highlight sister, sister, sister. I feel like they're putting this around you, though. Do you have a sister?
I do.
Okay, perfect.
It's like he's opening and closing his eyes, but he's not. Or falling asleep and waking up, but he's not.
Gotta be something coming out.
So this female coming through, I can tell would have passed away at a premature age. She's having me talk about sister, brother in this equation. It would be you and your sister. They're having me talk about this female's last moments or this female's last interactions with these people. And it's interesting because she's not putting concern around you, but she is putting concern around sister. And I can tell that it kind of has to do with this feeling of if people are going to be able to cope with my death after I die. There's this feeling for some reason of being concerned about sister. She's just acknowledging this feeling of I know my son's going to be all right. I get him. It's my daughter I'm kind of establishing more concern over as far as her ability to be independent, her ability to be able to kind of move on without this mother figure. When I passed, I wasn't worried about him. I was more concerned about her.
Right.
Does some of what I'm saying make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
It's actually you got me.
No worries.
My sister was such the straight A student, never in trouble. And I did everything wrong. And then now, my sister never made a great deal of money. She has a child with special needs, and it's tenuous. And so it makes sense that there should be a concern there. Her concern was not for my safety or my well-being. Her concern was for my sister.
The way I would describe this, it just keeps coming through, and it's Mom is having me acknowledge, okay, she's showing me a circle that always references to
Time?
Yes, and also sometimes addiction, sometimes cycles, things along those lines. And for some reason, she's bringing up sobriety, and it feels great, feels positive, but they're kind of correlating 2 events, and I'm trying to figure out what this is.
What's going on there? It's not a wave complex I'm used to seeing.
There's a reference to a decline here in the way this is coming in. Your mom is showing me a line, and it's going like this. And when they do that, it's always a way of referencing to I'm doing okay, and then something happens, and then I just kind of, my quality of life declines. And that's kind of the way I would describe it. There's just a reference with this that's just having me bring up. The thing is that this seemed untimely. This feels like a situation where it's I shouldn't have gone when I went. And then they're having me bring up, let me see here, figure out what she's showing me. She's showing me a car, she's showing me a phone call. She's bringing me, it's not her moment of passing, she's bringing me to this thing before, and I don't know why. This is an event Mom's having me highlight. There's a feeling of someone was waiting for me to call them, someone was waiting for me to reach out to them, and then they don't get a call from me, they get a call about me. And there's just something about this, the way this is coming in. I think Mom's showing me symbolically, she's referencing to being alone, and then she's showing me pressing a button, which is always symbolic for like, trying to get help, trying to get help, and then someone not responding. There's just kind of this feeling of like, hey, what's up? I need someone, like, what's wrong? And then if there's not someone there to receive me, it's kind of the way I would describe it, to like,
this is the biggest, like, it's the biggest problem that I have, I think is what you're describing there. I mean, everybody in the family suffered from alcoholism.
Gotcha.
The sobriety thing makes sense.
I see.
I've been sober for 10 years now. I'm the only one in the family that got sober.
Wow.
Mom struggled with it. She was on and off of the wagon. The point of decline was 5 years before Mom died.
I see.
On October 10th of 1998, Mom suffered an aneurysm. The response time, like, I know that just failed to call for an ambulance.
Gotcha.
So that would be the aneurysm was going to do what it was going to do no matter if the ambulance came quickly, but this ass waited for a long time before he called.
I see.
She, when she came out of the hospital, went into the home of this ass she was reconciling with. The being alone, and this is the biggest problem that I have, it's not the aneurysm. She was physically and mentally disabled for the last 5 years of her life. That was the point of decline.
I see.
The crucial problem is that she was left alone, and she developed bed sores. And the bed sores are the worst thing that can happen to anybody, period. Because here, Mom spent the last 5 years of her life crying in pain. My bottom. She had these huge, like, with all the nerves and that pain that she was in I still can't, I can't really handle that very well. You know, I have a lot of personal trauma over the pain and suffering that my mom went through.
Oh, I didn't know this. It's terrible.
All right, I can't even imagine having to go through that. And the way that this feels is, I mean, honestly, she comes through so at peace, and they always do.
I imagine that's how, that's the nature of the soul. The soul has no needs, no fears, no...
Absolutely no attachments.
So of course she's okay.
It's just us, the ones left behind, that are left to deal with that. And she acknowledges a sense of acceptance around her life and around her transition. She doesn't hold on to any resentment. In a very interesting way, she sees you in her. It's not that she has a masculine quality, but there's something that she sees in you that's almost identical to herself. She doesn't see it in your sister. It's you.
Right. I took after Mom.
Yeah. For better or for worse, your strengths and your weaknesses, she kind of feels like she can share some of those. And she can really relate to these. The essence of who she is kind of lives on through you and being able to be who you are.
I love that, man.
That's big.
I came here determined to be skeptical. It's like I wanted to go out of my way to be skeptical, and now I'm making an effort not to cry.
Well, good. Absolutely.
So yeah, you got me. You've completely disallowed that. Like, this is remarkable, and I'm grateful. I'm really grateful.
I totally get skepticism. I think that's why I put such an emphasis on the information. Because I think it speaks for itself, so.
Do people ever ask you to keep this?
Yes, you can keep them if you'd like. You're more than welcome to have them.
Cool,
if you'd like, yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Fabulous.
That piece of paper that Tyler was scribbling on, like, I see myself getting it framed in the next couple days. I see it living in my house in a prominent spot. I see myself thinking of Mom every time I look at it. Can I ask my fiance to come out?
Yeah, I would love to see her.
Lux.
Hello, how's it going? Oh, great to meet you.
So nice to meet you.
Oh, I'm all hooked up.
Did you love it?
I loved it. It was amazing.
It was beautiful. It was really beautiful. I just didn't have any doubt, and I don't have any doubt that that was real. Like the depth of the understanding of my sister is just undeniable. It was undeniably valid.
Tivo, my client.
Hi, I'm Teresa. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Teresa.
Thank you for being here.
I think you'll be fascinated by all this.
Oh, nice.
Very
I can hardly
interesting.
wait.
You already know your son is extraordinary. He's not just unusual and extraordinary. He's very unusual, and his brain is doing very unusual and fascinating things.
Wow.
And so thank you for allowing us a chance to, for the first time, really quantitate and look at objectively something like this. So Dr. Hill, tell us about it.
So this is the resting baseline we did before the reading.
Right.
When you're out in the corners of that color bar, then you're unusual.
Blue and red, and we're way outlying.
Yeah.
I see.
So I'm looking for things that are orange or red, or maybe blue. The extra delta means part of your brain got bruised or injured, probably.
Wow.
And I'm guessing that there was an injury here, and it actually caused a line of force through your brain, hit the back of the skull somehow, either through an impact or swelling or something like that.
You're right. So in February of 2014, I basically was put in the hospital with an arachnoid brain cyst that I was born with. And I went into emergency brain surgery, and it was like a whole thing, but I did sustain some brain
Do you know where it was?
It was in the back of my head.
Did some of your stuff happen, or your abilities develop after that?
No, it was all started before.
Before.
But it did make me wonder if it had any involvement.
Okay. Things got totally different when you started doing your work.
Really?
This was very unexpected.
I'm curious to see.
I sort of expected you to look like you had some ADHD, you were browning out, you were kind of going into a trance. That's
Clearly going into some other something.
Right.
Right? And then you would oftentimes when you say, I'm seeing, your actual visual areas would kind of shut down.
Wow.
Do you feel lightheaded or anything when you're...
Yes, when I do the readings.
Yeah, you
and
do?
I get very cold after, too.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense for your hypothesis of how
Yeah.
to drive up the physiology.
Yeah.
And what I'm gonna do now is open up a different set of maps that is the same thing, but done with your reading.
Wow.
Look at the difference when you're actually doing a reading.
This is not normal to go from that to that.
No, brain maps are stable year after year after year. Resting brain activity does not change unless you do something to your brain. Injuries, medication, meditation, a lot of neurofeedback. It looked like you were falling asleep from your brain while you were being very animated.
Does it feel like you're in a
It does,
dream?
like a daydream. That's literally how I
Oh,
describe
that's
it.
so fascinating.
Yeah, it's literally like a...
Because that's
like
what
a
we
daydream.
saw. It's exactly what we saw. And it was a pattern, too, of in and out.
Yeah.
Did you kind of come up and down in it?
Totally. It's a matter of just like connecting, and then I'll kind of disengage and then
So,
connect.
so if we sort of summarize, right, unusual.
Weird stuff.
Your active brain during a reading is very different than your resting brain.
Right?
The basic characteristic is almost sleep-like, dream-like, with the shutdown of the visual systems when you are seeing, which is, don't know how to make sense of that.
Right.
And receptivity. So you're sort of in an altered state, and you're receptive and you're empathic.
Right.
Which is sort of what we've all been talking about. So it's that connectedness that you're deeply involved with. Your brain allows you to do it in a way that's not normal.
Interesting.
It's unusual.
Fascinating.
But the brain is not sort of a narrative. You can't tell a story with the brain the way you can, say, with like a broken arm or something.
Nice.
Like, the brain doesn't fit like rational narrative sometimes.
Right.
And we do models about what might be true.
Right.
And what's really interesting is we've done 2 maps on you which should be identical and aren't. So that's an incredibly valid bit of data. Saying deeply what any of these things mean gets pretty squirrely pretty
Tricky.
fast.
Which is, we so appreciate the opportunity to do it. 'Cause
Likewise.
it's much like you described, you believe that there's a connectivity amongst all. And that's my theory about what you're doing, that we leave, there's residuals of all of us on one another, and Steve-O's mom is a big, important figure in his life, so she is with him, in him, part of him. This is beginning of some evidence that that might be so. I can't say that that's what's happening yet, so it looks like that kind of thing. Somebody could also interpret it and say, this openness makes him open to things that you're not aware of and can't see, and somebody's talking to him from the other world.
Right.
You can make that argument too.
I see.
I can make that argument.
You've been there. You were there with it. Yeah.
No.
Look, Dr. Hill and I are geeking out over this data, but the reality is you shared a very important experience, and that is outside of all of this, right?
There's no question.
Yeah, it's meaningful, regardless of where it came from or what it is.
I mean, everything Tyler told me strikes me as super valid. And then to see you guys sort of show evidence of how it's valid on a scientific level.
Right. Here's what I've always known about psychics that I've observed, that they're doing something, and no one has quite explained yet what that something is. And this is the beginning of that explanation. So.
Thank you. Wow. That's a lot to process, everybody.